Welcome to Draw Process. I'm Ike. This is where I share my process drawing pages of my comic, and I process about my art and my development as an artist. I'm on page 54 of episode 2 of my comic, First Sun and Sword. And this is the first page of the last chunk of pages where I did all of my rough pencils at once. Instead of doing one every week, using my script and then doing the roughs, which serve as my thumbnails, which really I mean penciling the page loosely. This is my thumbnail. This is my layout. And I'm doing that from the script. I used to do one page every week, but to make sure I finish the story strong and to try to speed up my efficiency, my process here, I decided to do everything to the end of the story and see how many pages that takes and see if I like what I'm coming up with before I'm totally locked in. And that was 33 pages, and this book will end on page 86. So there's quite a bit left for us to see in this episode, this issue. Right now we're with Farah and Sun. Farah decides to push the cart. We saw that in the last page. These men behind her are preparing to shoot her with the crossbows. The man from the roof falls on top of one of them, distracting them, saving her from getting shot. And then she's pushing the cart into Pompidou and his men. They shoot their crossbows at her. She's ducking, so the arrows go through her hat. Notice as I say this verbally, I'm saying like it's the important beats. I have to capture all of that in the drawings. Now, all of this is made up. All of this is ad lib. I know that action needs to happen. It needs to feel authentic. It needs to have layers to it. Let's layer what we can. So I know she needs to push the cart into them. They should probably be shooting at her. Let's try to make everything seem more believable. And that's going to require that everyone's doing something in the panel. And that can make it messy, so you need a nice composition and everything pretty clear. Sword pops up out of the cart. He was under the straw. He's holding his sword back, ready to swing. And the straw is flying in the air. And he's going to swing that and hit Pompidou, cutting off his hands and hitting a few of his men as well. And I'm really making this up as I go. I got my characters into a tough position. How are they going to get out of it? What would they do? It kind of writes itself to some degree. Now the part that I feel is harder to write itself, let's say, is the story, the actual conflict, how you convey personality of each character that might require some extra forethought. And that's stuff that I continue to work at. I know that in the next issue, I want to do more character work and more conflict. And I don't just mean conflict in terms of fighting, more fighting of villains who want to stop them, but conflict between characters, their goals, and what they're trying to get from each other. You'll see that I erased that panel, and I'm trying a different approach on how I can capture everything in one panel of him having swung his sword, cut off Pompidou's hands, hit the other men. That's a lot to capture in one panel. But I like to do that. I like it to come to life like that. You'll notice that I'm drawing sword last. I drew the men that were hit first, the back layer, you could say, visually, getting everything in position correctly, and now I can throw him in. I had my reasons before for doing one page a week. I wanted structure and consistency and to be realistic about what my output could be. But this choice now, after 2 years of maintaining that structure, this choice to vary from that and to spend a more intensive week on just the roughs really changed things. Changing the structure changed things. Now, if I was changing the structure every single day, then I'm not going to be able to tell what I'm learning from it, But because I stuck to something for 2 years, I definitely could notice what it did to me. I got good at doing roughs and and the need to be efficient, the need to be fast is much higher when you know you've got 30 pages to do instead of all I got to do is this one page. And that's important. I want to get the story out. I want to be efficient. So by setting myself up to have to do so many pages, and now that they're in rough pencil form, so many pages that I have to tighten up in ink, I'm going to be set up to value efficiency much more. And that came across in the inks on this page, as you will see. I definitely loosened up on the inks, and I'm oriented towards telling the story efficiently. And so I know that it's partly that I spent more time drawing, but it was there's other reasons. Like I said, I'm engaged in the bigger picture instead of in just one page. It's giving me perspective on what to value, what is important, and I just feel much more clear about that. I want my figures and everything to be loose and expressive. I don't need to draw. I'm learning to let go of drawing every hand and every line, every outline, every piece of things, and just let them kind of be a dream, just kind of an image that might have a lot of vagueness in it, not very clear, but enough that you tell what's happening and you keep moving. The art itself appears more movement in it. So, I'm feeling clear about that, and I'm going to continue in this direction. I think it will speed me up, and it will affect the way I can produce these videos, because I'm not going to be doing a page a week. And so I don't want the video making to become cumbersome for me when it's not linked directly to my process like it has been. So I'm going to figure that out as we go. For now, I'm going to try to stick to one per week, although I missed last week, like I said. Coming in with the tighter pencils, again, you can even tell that I'm not precious with the details. I'm getting the outer forms down and moving on. I'm still using the 4H pencil because those roughs are so loose that I can add more in without having to go with a darker pencil for you to be able to see it, for me to be able to see it. This is the most like the comics of my youth, when I would just draw freely, and you just could do so many pages, and it was really messy, but I'm telling a story, and of course, seeing them, I thought I'll never be able to do this for a living because these aren't that good, but by practicing and putting in more time and more training, you just keep doing it. And now I'm getting where I can do a pretty decent page with the same approach of my childhood, of just drawing the story. And it'll be good enough for people to read it and enjoy it. And that's all I need. That's right on. I feel so right when I get in line with what the core is of telling a story with your visuals, of drawing these things into being from imagination. I'm getting there. There was a time when I couldn't do that. It was a lot more difficult to think of to draw things in perspective, to draw the human form, to have ideas of architectural elements or clothing and so on. And you might need to be looking at more reference to get there, and preparing more before you start drawing, preparing what the world will look like and so on. Yeah, and so there's learning along the way, but I can see now that the best I've done is when I maintained this approach. So even though I might need more reference, to approach it with imagination when you draw the page, so I could look at reference ahead of time, which I did for First Sun and Sword. I found a lot of reference, and I would just draw and fill some sketchbook pages with characters with different, weapons, and even just drawing the weapons, just kind of looking at a list, pictures of weapons, and just kind of drawing that weapon, committing it to my memory in a sense. And same with architecture and different features there. And build that library, and then start drawing the pages. And the same happens with the characters. I get more and more used to drawing Sword, Farah, and Sun. And so I kind of have a library where I can draw them without thinking. Kind of like an artist who's drawn, on X-Men and stuff. It's like if they have a commission to draw Wolverine or whatever, they can just draw it. They're so familiar with that character. They don't have to reference what the costume looks like or whatever. And it gets that way with your own characters and stuff. You can do it without thinking. And then feel not as good if you're suddenly needing to draw sci-fi. If I had to draw something sci-fi with new characters and new everything, I would need to do some sketchbook work before I could do it in the way that I like to work. And that's what I need to do. That's what I've learned is in line with the approach that's more imaginative, immediate. I'm not going so far as drawing completely finished, ink lines from imagination. I'm doing some structural underdrawing to build out my drawing. Isn't necessary. I don't know that I have to do that, but I'm more comfortable doing it. It doesn't slow me down too much. That isn't my goal. My goal is not to be able to perform in that way, to just draw from imagination straight to ink, finished art with no perspective, no structure, lines laid down. There's no point to that. That's not what my storytelling interest is about. If it's faster, that's good, but even that it might be counter to storytelling, because when I start to scribble things out, I am helping myself picture the movie play out. So I kind of need some structural stuff thrown down, because it still is faster than drawing finished art straight from the imagination. It's still faster than that when it comes to getting it down roughly for my writing purposes, to sort of visualize and see the movie play out for myself and be happy with where that's going. It's all about the writing, the storytelling, visualizing it, bringing it to life. You'll see that I struggled with Sword's arm right here, because honestly, I ended up putting the arm back in kind of the original position I had it in the underdrawing. But when I looked at it and I thought about how he was holding the sword, his right hand is on the grip of the sword at first, with his left hand like kind of supporting, and when he swings it to the other side, the right hand would still be holding it, but with the sword at that angle, it would be a very odd position to hold it in. So how do I capture that? And I thought, well, I might have to twist the arm, position the elbow differently, but in the end, it was not going to help. It's definitely an awkward thing. And this was me getting caught up on a detail that does not matter, right? Like, the reader is going to see him with the sword back, see the sword on the other side. They know that he swung the sword. It doesn't matter how did he switch his grip? How did he literally do that? Is not so important. And that isn't me being so much perfectionistic or OCD or just, overly caught up in details. I mean, it is somewhat that, but it's because to me, it is a movie. Like, he did swing his arm from that side to the other, and where's his arm now? Like, it felt wrong. It felt like this isn't the movie. Like, let me see what really happened in this world, in this reality. So I'm just getting caught up in the story, in the movie. And I can't get too caught up in it. And, that's another way of putting something I'm learning, is to be efficient. I can't define every shape perfectly and every piece of a person's anatomy or the architecture. You can't do all of that and be quick, and be efficient. You have to choose. Even if you're highly detailed, you're choosing what to convey. What's important, and I need to let go and be less precious with it and tell the story. I've been talking about that, not caring what it looks like, just drawing. It's like improv. If you're doing improv, you can't be thinking. I mean, not that I've done it, but I'm sure you can't be thinking about, well, what's my style? Like, you just got to do it and do it and do it, and then your personality, your style will come out. People will see over time, and you will find out over time who you are. And maybe you'll be really successful, and people will love your personality, something about you, but you didn't get to decide that. You found it out. And sure, you can adapt and change over time, but you had to find it out by doing it, by actively engaging freely in it and letting things flow, and then being self-aware and reflecting on what you did. That's everything in life. But I've been doing that, and that's how I see my process. And feeling really on track here. One concern I had was if I drew all the pages and then had to ink them and then color them, even, that I would get sick of the story, that I wouldn't want to finish it. That's one thing that I know has made me want to just stick to one page a week and not get too overloaded with things to do. And there's something about when you finish the rough version of the story and you see it and you're like, okay, here it is, it's done. I can't wait to share it with people. Well, if that's going to take another 6 months, that sucks. It does hurt your motivation to some degree. And I think I'm going to be okay with that, because that adds pressure. It adds necessity on being efficient, just focusing on what matters, getting it done. This is resulting in rounder forms. They're more organic because it makes more sense for your drawing style and inking style for things to be more rounded and organic, because there's a lot more little lines. You're building these things. I think that I'm having troubles putting words to that, but I think it's harder to refine it down into clean lines, sharp edges, because you almost have to go through a smooth stage to get to that. So I'm trying to keep it rounded and organic and loose natural. And so you'll see that I move around the page a lot. I move around the figure. In the inks, I'm now, because my pencils are not super clear, I'm starting to draw with the pen. So my inking style, quite a while ago, like in the first issue of First Sun and Sword, my inking was closer to, it wasn't, my pencils weren't so tight that I could just trace them. It was closer to a tracing process. I can start in the top left corner and just move through the image like a robot to the end and finish it. But now the pencils are so rough that I have to draw with the ink. So I'm hitting things that are in the foreground, that other things that overlap other things that it's in front. I might have to draw those first, and I might only draw the outline of things first, and then come in and add more detail into it, and then come in and add more shading, because I don't want to have to erase. I want to make sure the lines are in the right spot, and things that overlap, the front things are in front. Like here, you'll notice I drew the guy in front before I drew the guy to his left, to get his edge down, to put the other guy behind it. So it's drawing more. It's more like sketching, and it looks more like sketching. This is resulting in less heavy blacks. The blacks have been heavier before, and maybe more balanced, maybe a nicer balance of dark to light. And now it's much more natural and expressive and impressionistic in a way. Something that also pushes me this direction is when there is so much action, so many characters, you can't be too precious with it. I can't be too structured. I need to just cartoon, the term I use, cartooning, in terms of just kind of drawing in this fashion, improvising, drawing, conveying character and movement from as an idea. And so that pushes me more this direction. So I'm glad I didn't stray from or shy away from heavy action with lots of characters, lots of backgrounds. I didn't try to simplify. In the past, maybe I would have tried to simplify the number of characters, the amount of complexity in the environment, to keep it clean and make it easier to draw. That is not my path anymore. It's very clear to me, like I've been saying about getting more clear. My path is high complexity. Lots going on. Anything I imagine going on, and conveyed, but conveyed impressionistically, loosely. So there could be a crowd of 1,000 people, and I have no problem drawing it. It's not too challenging. It's not much different than these little lines on this building behind them. Just that's how easy the crowd would be. Like this small crowd you have there. It's just as easy as drawing anything else. And there's something holistic about that. I'm trying not to be super careful with my figures, but really loose with the backgrounds or something like that. Everything has the same treatment. The drawing is not a background and a figure on top of it, and so on. The drawing is the sum total of everything there. You treat it as a whole. You scribble it in as a whole. I do think that it's becoming more clear that there is a system to what I'm doing. Now, I didn't plan that out, but just by practice, there's a system becoming noticeable. The way that I start with, figures and find the vanishing point, and then lay in some of the perspective and start to build out the rest of the figures and then the background. Like there's definitely a strategy, a reason that I go in a particular order. And it allows me to build a panel, a scene very quickly. And by doing so many pages, by getting so much practice at this, and that's the other thing I'm learning, I love doing this. It for many artists, and for me, it has at times been the most frustrating part of making comics, is this initial working out of the perspective and everything. But to me, this is the most fun and the most real. It's the thing in itself, the thing that I'm supposed to be doing, that we're supposed to be doing when we make comic books. So this is all I want to do, is this thing, which I used to think was hard, but it gets easier. It gets easier and more enjoyable the more you do it. But if I spend 10 to 1, you only have so much time in your life, and only so much time that you're going to spend practicing and training or doing it. And if it's 90% of the time coloring, inking, and perfecting, and only 10% working out the perspective, the environments and so on, building in backgrounds and everything, then you're not getting much practice. You're not getting much better at it. So instead of being afraid of it, go all in and do it and get better at it. And it's liberating. It's the freedom that I have always wanted to reach, and I'm getting there. It helps that it's the same characters and environments that I'm getting comfortable with. But like I said, I would do the same thing. If I needed to draw a sci-fi book, I would draw those, elements of that, the visuals of that, the pieces of it that I need to imagine and throw in. I would draw them a ton of times, draw the characters a ton of times, and then draw the book. Now, that's not a liberty a lot of artists have when they're working on a tight schedule and you have to draw whatever you're given. It's if you're doing a Star Trek book or whatever, that's what you're doing now, and you don't really have time to commit that to procedural memory, all of that. But you might actually. You might, because if you go this path I'm going, look, it's going to be very fast. The actual production of the work can be fast. Of course, this is also well suited to writing the story yourself, choosing the shots yourself, and everything like that, which I also think is a core thing to what this is meant to be, what it is that we're doing. It's storytelling. In itself. It's writing. It's also writing of story. It's not like you need to write the story and then draw it. This in itself is a process of writing, such as, handwriting in a journal. I'm giving myself a lot of the camera angles, the view on things. There's a lot of very up angles, very down angles, very dynamic. So that's something that I let loose on, and I just get more comfortable with. It's sometimes it's a little wonky. It's not accurate. The width and size of things and so on is not always so accurate, but again, it's cartooning. It's like the old comic strips. Like it doesn't have to be totally accurate, but there's a level of accuracy in what I'm drawing that you don't get in a lot of cartoons. Because of my influences, because of my practice, I've maintained the way I structure the drawing before I finish it, and all kinds of reasons. There it is. There's a shadow layer. There's a light layer. Flat colors. you'll see how the color really helps make things clear. And that's something I'm, taking advantage of too, is knowing that it's going to be colored. I can let the colors make it clear what is bloody, what is, this material or that, by using the color to separate these things. There it is. Quite a few panels squeezed in. Lots of characters in action, even in small panels. It's not super simple. It takes a little energy, a little time to make sense of what's in each image because there's so many pieces of it. But it's not unclear, and that's something that's going to come with me getting looser. Is it might take a little more effort for the reader to make sense of it, a little more time maybe, what they're looking at, and there's the rub, there's the dance that I'm trying to go on with the reader. Can I trust them to be able to tell what I mean and get the gist of it, without getting bogged down and trying to double check everything to know what I meant and what was happening in a panel that's kind of complicated? That, I think, represents a higher level of complexity, or you could say higher mastery. When you learn about drawing comics, when you're a student of it, you learn that you need to be very efficient, very clear, very dumbed down, and very clear to the reader, so that you know that they get what you're trying to tell them and show them. But that's not how it really works. When you look at masters of literature or whatever, they're not just trying to dumb things down and make it the most simple clear. And same with film. They're not always doing that. There is some kind of attempt at communicating to the reader, to the viewer, trusting the viewer, to be interested in a more complex game or something. And that takes greater mastery to know that, to know how to trust yourself to bend things and make it more complex and risky in a sense for the reader. Yeah, okay. So that was a final thought that came to me that I wanted to squeeze in there, but that is it for this week. I should be back next week because, like I said, I have all those roughs done, so everything's pretty straightforward now to be on track for a page a week, at least, we'd say. Bye.